One night, while I was about 17 or maybe 18, I was living in this old Victorian home on the top floor. I lived alone. You could afford to live alone back then. And it was a creepy place. I loved the upstairs. It was very nicely done, and it was only $279 a month, close to the downtown of the city that I was living in. Now, one night, I was unexpectedly in for the evening. I had a full-time job, a part-time job as well, and a very active social life, so being home alone was pretty rare for me. It was raining very hard that day, and I remember looking outside and watching the puddles get bigger and bigger. I went to bed quite early. Suddenly, though, I woke up abruptly after what felt like I had been sleeping for a long time. It was completely dark, almost pitch black in my bedroom. There was just a bit of light in the corner of my room from the streetlight outside. I looked at my digital bedside clock. I had only been asleep for 5 minutes at the most, though. I kind of got chills then, and I heard what I can only describe as like a hissing sound. I looked up to the ceiling of my bedroom, and there was a black blob-like form that was just moving and changing size and slowly making its way to me. By the time the realization that it was coming to me hit me, I became unable to move my limbs, my body. I could not talk or scream. I just laid there, unable to do anything but watch it get closer to me. When it reached me, it just kind of settled on me. I could feel its weight. I couldn't close my eyes. I so desperately wanted to, but I just couldn't. The terror that I felt cannot be described, though. The evil that I felt from this form was immense, and I have not felt anything like this, that kind of evil, in my life ever. After what seemed like hours, though, suddenly it was gone. My room got brighter and I was able to move again. I checked my clock, but again, only 5 minutes had passed. This experience happened 2 more times while I was living in that old Victorian house. I later learned, though, through research at the library, that I had apparently been visited by an incubus. When I returned to the city that I grew up in and lived in that house, I drive by it. It's still standing, and I don't know if it's divided up into 3 separate apartments now, but it's a lot more run down, that's for sure. A lot of strange things would happen in those rooms. Things would go missing, and I'd find them in very odd places. And as far as I'm concerned, that house, it's definitely haunted. I was traveling with some friends on some 4x4 trails in southern Idaho. We were camping out one night, singing music around a campfire for quite a while, and my friends decided to go to bed eventually. My ex and I stayed up a little bit longer, hanging out around the fire and just enjoying the atmosphere. Then suddenly, everything just got dead silent, like the world got put on mute. I'm no stranger to this phenomenon. It generally happens when there's a predator nearby, and being in bear country, I had my bear spray on me, so I wasn't too worried. My ex and I continued to enjoy the fire, though, until we heard someone way off in the distance say, "honey," 3 times. You could tell it was far away, but it also had the sound of a whisper rather than a yell, an almost questioning tone, like it was a woman calling out for her husband. My friend peeked out of his rooftop tent and asked if we were the ones calling out, but we weren't. The weirdest thing, though, is that it just didn't sound right. More so something that sounds like a woman calling out honey, but not actually a human woman. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but the more rational side of us decided that it may have been a hiker or something. The moon was full, so the idea of a couple hiking at night, especially since we weren't too far from the nearest town, wasn't too unlikely, I guess. My friend and his girlfriend, they decided to rejoin us for a little bit, and they also commented on the lack of wildlife sounds. We sat for a few more minutes before, again, hearing that honey sound. My friend agreed that it didn't sound right at all. He called out hello just in case there was some poor lost woman somewhere, but nothing responded. A few minutes later, we heard the same call, but from the complete opposite direction. With how far it sounded, there was just no way some lost hiker could have circled all the way around our camp that quickly. We lit up our floodlights, and we quickly booked it out of the area, and ended up cutting our overland trip very short. I still have no idea who or what made those noises, and it really still creeps me the heck out. Honestly, too, I'm really not sure if I'll be traveling to southern Idaho ever again. Now, I know that this sounds fantastical and wild, and honestly, I couldn't disagree. This is in fairly remote backcountry, West Virginia, which is known for being old and haunted. It was experienced entirely by the two of us, but the worst parts by all four. This led to all four of us at some point battling personal issues in our lives that I believe stemmed directly from this encounter. The following is, at least to my memory and what I've been able to corroborate with the other people that were there, 100% accurate and true. So when I was 17, 2004, we had a bad experience camping near haunted train tunnels and sites of sudden tragic death. The history of the immediate 1 square mile area is that mother and son drowning in the creek nearby, drug dealers killed in state police shootout at a nearby hunting cabin, and many years before, cheap laborers had been killed building this double set of train tunnels. They were actually buried in a long-forgotten little graveyard nearby the tunnels that has since been found and restored. We decided to go camping before graduation as a friend group of 4, just to do something one last time before we all went our separate ways in life. This is a private property on the backside of a big hill around which the creek flows in a huge several-mile-long bend. A camp set up and fire going. Shortly after nightfall, my cousin and I sat back on the creek bed, maybe 20 yards away from the camp spotlight, a fish in the water. We then began to hear a sort of, rhythmic sloshing sound. A slosh of what sounded like somebody wading through the water, maybe halfway up to their shin deep. So we shined the light around upstream, and we then spotted symmetrically and rhythmically consistent disturbances made by what looked and sounded like invisible feet or legs sloshing toward us. When we would turn our spotlights off, it would start again. It would then stop when illuminated, and whatever it was definitely reacting to us. And this was the first ice bucket stomach clench moment we knew that this was not fish and could not rationalize what was actually happening. This scared us pretty badly, but we decided best to be kept to ourselves and join the others gathered at the fire suddenly. As we made our way back, we heard the sloshing make its way to where we were on the bank and the noise stopped. Given the speed that we witnessed it moving and how far it was from us when we were watching it, it must have sped up to make it to the bank that we were on in the amount of time that it took us to get to the camp. Others at the camp heard it as well and figured that we'd either gotten in or somehow riled up some fish, but we just played it off in the end. And as crazy as it sounded and looked like an invisible person wading towards us through the water. After the noise ended at the creek bank, we then all saw the tall grass disturbed as something that we couldn't see ran around the foliage perimeter of our circularly cleared campsite. Now, this could have been an animal, I admit, but whatever it was fast. We then began to hear what sounded like a man talking to us, as in speaking into the ear of each person, the left ear, if that matters. At first, it sounded like garble, really, but after maybe 15 to 20 seconds, we could make out the words saying we shouldn't be there, and we needed to leave, before finally addressing us directly and saying slightly more forcefully, "You need to leave." Obviously, as you can imagine, this was absolutely terrifying, and at first we thought that it was a person or group of people out there walking up on our camp and that it was dangerous. We were all frozen with fear though, but then adrenaline suddenly hit. As we freaked out and started to run to our ATV, all four of us saw what we all described as a tall black shadow man wearing what looked like a hat, relaxing against the front of our ATV. It straightened up when we saw it, and it saw us, allegedly, and it just sort of hung there staring at us for a few seconds. No feet, the legs ended in sort of wavy lines, like looking above the fire at the heat waves. It stood out against the dark night behind it, though, and it was definitely there. The girl screamed, which broke our fear freeze, and it zipped like the Flash back towards the train tunnels people had died in. Interestingly, when we went to start the ATV, it sort of turned over sluggishly as if the battery had been slightly drained, despite working fine not long before when we rode it down. This entire event happened over the course of, I don't know, I want to say maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and within an hour of the sun going down. After putting our story out there, I received a lot of feedback from people as well who have also had bad encounters in this area over many years. Even a guy I worked with who didn't know that we knew this area told me that my uncle had hired him to trap in that area, and it was the only place that he didn't check traps alone at night. He said that it was almost like the animals leave the place at night and it was completely quiet out there. No less than a month later, my uncle who owns the property was up on the hill raccoon hunting at night with a dog. At some point, the dog was on a rock face up above him and actually knocked a large rock loose that fell and struck my uncle in the side of the neck. This understandably messed him up pretty bad and paralyzed almost his entire body, but he still had limited functionality on his left side. We could never figure out how he got himself back to his ATV and turned it over and drove himself out of there because, really, he just wasn't capable of that anymore. It wasn't until probably maybe 2 or 3 years later, around Halloween, when my story makes its rounds on the local Facebook groups, that my uncle texted my mother out of the blue. You have no reason to believe my uncle's character reference, but honestly, he is a salt-of-the-earth, hunting, farming, working sort of man. Even working past his retirement as a millionaire. He's honest, funny, and just incredibly a stand-up guy. He is easygoing, but also no nonsense for sure. In his text to my mother, though, he said, "I've never told anybody this before, and I probably won't again. But the man in the hat that the kids saw at the creek that night helped pick me up off the ground and put me back on the ATV and turned me around." Until I heard that, I had always assumed that the Shadow Man was the one who was trying to scare us out of there, but thinking back on it, maybe he was the one whispering to us, telling us that we needed to leave and possibly avoid something scarier and more dangerous. Although I honestly have no idea what could have been scarier than that. So I just wanted to come on here and talk about my house and some of the weird stuff that's been going on recently in it. I've lived in this house alone for about 5 years now, I would say. Nothing really noteworthy happened until 2021, and it really wasn't anything crazy. Like small stuff. My garage door would be open when I thought that I'd closed it. The sink is running, cupboards open, etc. I started noticing other stuff happening around that time as well, though. I would think that I'd hear footsteps around my house, but it was always something that I thought that I could play off as just being tired since I work full-time along with college and all that. It didn't happen all too often as well, so I didn't really worry too much about it. But it started to become more frequent as years have gone by, and recently a few things have happened that have definitely got me pretty spooked, to the point that I've stayed at a friend's house because of them. I'll share them now, but I'm really not sure what I want out of this. Maybe some clarity or something, or some advice on what to do, but yeah, here's what happened. So the first thing that happened was around August of 2024. I was sitting in my office room doing some homework and playing some music. I started to hear what I thought sounded like a woman at my door. Now, I note, my next door neighbor is a single mother and she goes on walks past my house literally every night. Figuring that she might be at my door asking for something, I open the door, only to find no one there. I close the door and sit back down, and over the next week or so, I started hearing what I thought was a woman talking just out of earshot. I would think that it was my TVs, but I keep them off when I'm not using them. I was pretty stumped and frustrated over it as well. It all built up to one night where I'm laying in bed and I hear this same voice, lady just out of earshot, talking at my bedroom door. Tired and creeped out, I jumped out of bed to check, only to find when opening my door, nobody was there. It chilled me enough to where goosebumps formed. I locked my bedroom door, which I never do, and got back into bed. Maybe 5 minutes later, it started happening again. I got back up and literally screamed, "Leave me alone," packed a bag, and I ended up spending the night at a friend's house a little ways down the street, and it hasn't happened since. The next incident happened about a month ago. Doing homework in my room, all of a sudden my home phone starts ringing. Problem is that I haven't had a phone connected since the hurricane swept through Florida, and have had no reason to put it back in. I quickly jumped out of my bed, shuffled out to check the phone, and sure enough, it's ringing at me. I picked it up and it immediately died. I have absolutely no clue how this could have rung as well, unless the phone battery is jacked up or something. Since then, I have thrown the phone away because, to heck with that, right? Now, this next one is the one that made me want to come on here and talk about my experience thus far. This happened about a week ago. So, I have a boxer puppy who turns 1 on Saturday, by the way, who is usually pretty relaxed. I've never seen him frightened because, frankly, he just doesn't even know what's going on half the time. It's probably about 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm chilling in my kitchen. Knox is laying next to me, probably wanting my food. Eventually, he walks away, and as I finally indulge into said food, he stops about 6 feet from my garage door and starts growling. Like, tail up, looking like he's going to bite someone, kind of growl. Mind you, I've never seen him growl like this, not once, so I was a little bit freaked out from the get-go, to say the least. I try calling him back over, but he is absolutely dialed into whatever he's growling at. I start walking over slowly to him. I turn the corner to look at my door, and it literally slams. It sounds like a giant object slammed right into my door, loud as anything. My dog jumps back and runs to go hide in my room. I, on the other hand, open my door, run into my garage to see if someone had tried to break in, only to see that everything was perfectly quiet. The door was fine too. Needless to say, I grabbed the dog up and we drove to stay at my friend's house for the night again after that. Since then too, I've been on edge the past week being at my own home. It feels like I have to watch my back constantly now because something just might happen. I'm losing sleep over this, and honestly, I really just don't know what to do at this point. This happened about a year back. I was standing in my balcony around 3 a.m. at night, smoking a cigarette. I was facing the window, and in the window I saw a reflection of something sitting on the rooftop of the building opposite across the street. I turned around and there was nothing. I continued smoking, and as I look up at the roof again, I saw a dark figure sitting on the ledge of the building. It wasn't sitting normal too, kind of like how Spider-Man sits on a light pole, like it was hunting for something. I kept looking at it, trying to figure out what it was and if it's really what I think it is, or am I just sleep deprived or something. After like half a minute of me staring, though, I felt like it looked back at me, and I just kept staring at it, and I was completely lost. It was a little bit dark, but I'm certain that this thing had almost human-like features, but in the most messed up way imaginable. A skin that kind of looked burnt, and I'm sure that it didn't have eyeballs and just 2 empty eye sockets. When I realized what I was doing, I immediately turned my head down. Just a second later, I looked up again, and it was gone. I went inside and drank some water, and I then hear a scream coming from somewhere nearby. I went to my balcony again, and the screaming didn't stop. It sounded like a woman, but there were no breaks in the scream. It was a continuous loud scream. Me being a bit of an idiot, I went downstairs and started walking towards the sound. The road was dimly lit and not a soul in sight. I walked, and I think about maybe 500 meters in, I realized suddenly that the sound was exactly like it was from my balcony. The sound should have been louder, much louder, but it was exactly the same. So I kept walking towards the sound, and I walked for a while and still didn't get any louder. Every once in a while I would forget that I was walking, or even where, and just kept walking, and then I would sort of snap back as well. It was a really strange feeling, and at this point I realized that I had come quite far from my house to an almost barren area. So I started walking back towards my house, and the screaming didn't stop. It was an extremely eerie sound, almost human but not quite. A human's breath while screaming, but whatever it was, it didn't sound right. It's almost like I was drawn towards it too. Anyway, I eventually reached home and opened a can of beer, and after a while I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and went to that rooftop to see if I could find anything. I first inspected the spot that I first saw in the reflection, and then the ledge, and there was nothing. I used baby powder as well. Don't judge, I know, kind of cringe. And a transparent tape too, to see if I could find a fingerprint or find any cells in the sample, but in the end I found nothing. Now, here's the thing though. I don't really believe in ghosts or the paranormal, like, at all. I honestly still don't because, well, I'm just a scientist at heart. But I cannot for the life of me find an explanation for this incident. It never haunts me. I didn't lose any sleep over it or anything, but I still wonder what it could have been. I know I wasn't seeing things. I mean, I wasn't drunk or high or anything. I guess the reason that I'm sharing this story after a year is because, well, 3 days ago, I was sitting with my friends and we were sharing weird things that we haven't told anyone about, and I shared this incident with them and they were pretty terrified by it, especially because they know that I'm the kind of guy who laughs at someone who claims that they saw a ghost, or even someone who believes in one. A friend told me that she didn't sleep the night after going home and recommended that I share it here to ask people what they think it was. So, what do you think that it was? I'm sharing this because I found this place tonight, and I thought that I would share something that I've experienced probably around 2005 to 2006, when I was about 10 to 11 years old. I've never told anyone about this, and I always felt the need to, though. It's just one of those things that I'll always remember, I guess. So, when I was a kid, we used to go on these monthly vacations in August to a beach town here in Portugal called Sesimbra. It was always very fun, going to the beach every day, playing football with my cousins, going out for dinner to eat seafood. Honestly, it was a really great time to be Portuguese and travel in your own country. Anyways, this old lady would arrange us beachfront apartments every year, and it would vary, some worse, some better. There's this huge building at the end of California Beach, though, which seems to be falling off the edge, and there's these sort of wooden stairs that you need to climb to directly access the building from the beach. If you've been there, then you'll know what I'm talking about, but we were spending the monthly vacation on this building specifically, on one of the top floors. I believe it was the 8th floor, and I used to sleep in the living room couch, which had access to the balcony. I cannot remember sleeping alone on a regular basis, mainly because I was really scared of the dark and being alone at that age. Usually my dad would sleep there as well, while my grandparents stayed in the only bedroom. However, I can't remember why he wasn't there this particular night. But since he worked a full-time job, he would often stay only for 2 weeks instead of the whole month, so it's probably why, I would guess. But anyway, all of that is to say that I was sleeping when I woke up, startled, and I couldn't move. I was conscious, and I don't think it was sleep paralysis or anything like that. I was just terrified because of what I was hearing and seeing. It was a loud buzzing sound and a sort of light blue light covering the whole living room. I swear to you as well that I was so scared that I just couldn't face it, because I felt like this presence, or whatever it was, wasn't good. I don't think it was evil or demonic or whatever, but just terrifying and sort of threatening. It seemed to be some kind of a UFO just hovering near the balcony. I promised myself not to move until it was gone, and then the weirdest thing is that I cannot remember if I fell asleep again or if I simply waited for it to go away, but the next thing that I remember is that it was morning. What I do remember, though, is thinking to myself, this isn't a dream, this is real, and I won't forget that this is really happening. So obviously I remember that part, but as for that time gap, I have no idea what happened. Anyway, this felt good to get it off my chest after so many years and finally voice it and tell some other people. If you have any input or if you would like to share any thoughts, then please do. This happened to me Wednesday night. So my boyfriend lives in the town over, and he orders me lifts back and forth to go and see him. We've been doing this for over the past 7 months without any problems. But we spent the day together and had an amazing time as always, and he ordered me a lift back home. The guy pulls up and my boyfriend puts me in the car and gives me a passionate kiss goodbye. The driver is from Cuba, hardly speaks a lick of English, and is using Google Translate the entire time to talk to me. First, it started off as, "Do you mind sitting in the front seat? I don't like for people to sit behind me." Okay, no problem. However, instead of letting me out of the car, he asks me to climb over the seat, which made me feel a bit uncomfortable, and then I realized that he was staring at me the whole time that I'm doing so. Then he proceeds to tell me, "I hope I'm not being too daring, but you're very beautiful." Okay, cool, I get this compliment all the time, so I say thank you, but I'm a bit put off by this, to be honest. He goes on like a regular driver, asking me if the music was okay, and the volume and all that, you know, the regular stuff. Then he starts asking me about the address that I'm going to. "Am I taking you to your home?" I reply, "Yes, I'm going home." He then asks, "Can I go home with you?" I laugh at this and say no. He asks about the guy that put me in the car, if he was my boyfriend or my husband. He's my boyfriend, my soon-to-be husband. He asks, "Can I be your boyfriend too?" I say absolutely not. He asks why not. I say that I'm totally against that I'm in love with my boyfriend very much, and that I'm extremely loyal and faithful to him. He says he doesn't have to know. In Cuba, we believe in having multiple partners, and not all of them know about each other. And I say, well, that's definitely not a thing for me. I don't believe in that one bit. He says, "Your boyfriend makes the mistake of sending you home alone. I would have taken you myself to make sure you got there safe." I'm getting very upset at this point, And I'm only laughing at what he says, trying to maintain a friendly composure because I know how ugly things could turn if I start giving this guy attitude. He doesn't speak again for a while, and when he does, he asks me again if he could come home with me. I tell him no again, and he says, "You're so beautiful, I really want to be your other boyfriend." I don't even say anything but shake my head no and start fidgeting with my phone. He tells me that he has a lot of money and that he would take care of me. I told him that I didn't care about that and that I wasn't interested. He asks if he could give me his number so that we could text each other, and I say no. After what seemed like an eternity, we pull up to my house and he gets down trying to help me with my bags. I decline his help and he tells me, "Hold on," and pulls out his phone one more time and asks, "Can I come inside with you?" I tell him have a good night and to have a safe trip back, and dart inside as fast as I could, locking all the doors behind me, calling my boyfriend immediately so that he could report this weirdo because I don't want this unpleasant experience to happen to anybody else. In the end though, the only thing Lyft did was give my boyfriend a $5 credit to his account for the unpleasant experience. He wasn't even able to tell him. He really wasn't even able to tell them why it was so unpleasant. And look, I know, stories like this aren't actually the scariest or creepiest ones out there, but if you were a young woman and in a stranger's car like this, and they were pressing like this and trying to come into your home and everything, trust me, going through something like this is actually pretty terrifying. So yes, ladies, creepy drivers are definitely a thing, and please, be careful out there. So I'm a man living alone in an apartment, for reference. I was walking into my building this evening and a lady that I've never talked to before and rarely even seen said hello. I'm personable and polite, so I said hello back and went to walk into the building. Then she asked how I was and how the weekend was going. I assumed it was just some friendly small talk, so I obliged, and then immediately she asked where I worked and how long I've lived in the building for, which threw me a little bit but seemed innocent enough. Then, about as soon as I finished answering, she said, "No one has ever helped me or offered me help my whole life, and I'm just trying to better myself, but nobody will help. People don't ask me to go out and do any fun things, and I like to do fun things." So I just kind of stammered something about how that's rough or whatever. Again, immediately once I stopped talking, she started up the same thread, a bit frustrated and exasperated. "I don't have any friends. No one offers help. I'm just a nice person." I'm paraphrasing, but that was basically it. This whole time she's like barely blinking though, won't break eye contact, and is kind of cornering me as well. My hair on the back of my neck is up and my skin is crawling, and my super came out and said that she needed me for something and got me inside. She then told me that I really shouldn't be talking to her. I said that I thought maybe she was just lonely and socially inept, but she said to avoid her. Women like this seem to have a good instinct about dangerous or unhinged people, so I plan on following her advice, but as someone with friends on the spectrum and having worked with the mentally disabled in my life, I at first thought that maybe it was just that. Now, it's been a few hours and honestly, I still cannot shake this uneasy feeling. I thought that I would ask anybody here if they knew what this might be, or maybe if this is ringing any bells or setting alarms off for anyone, because I don't want to treat someone who is just eccentric as a pariah, undeservedly too. But honestly though, I would be lying if I didn't say that my gut is screaming for me to be careful. Over a year ago, I was forced to move out of my apartment due to a serious mold problem that was making people sick. and the management refused to remediate it to the extent that we needed them to, and they did as little as legally possible, basically. But because of all of my things that were there essentially were caked in toxic mold spores, it was a huge effort to thoroughly clean what could be cleaned and bring the rest to the dump. We didn't thrift them because, well, the contamination was either too difficult or just not possible to clean certain items, like couches and mattresses and things like that. But anyway, my sister-in-law was helping me sort through everything that I owned to determine what was worth keeping and cleaning. I lost most of my belongings at this stage, but while we worked, she kept saying that she felt uncomfortable in certain rooms and couldn't shake the feeling. I didn't think too much of it. We were alone at night, and I suggested that we move out to the brightly lit porch instead. Every now and then she would turn back inside to grab a box or a tool or whatever, and then she said that she saw some shadow figures. She said that she didn't say anything earlier because it might have been her imagination, but now apparently she was sure. Well, we had done a lot of work, so we decided to just wrap things up and leave in the end. Now, on the way back to the car, she glanced back at the unit and she froze. She then says, "Look in the windows. You don't see that?" I didn't see anything out of the ordinary at first. She then held firmly onto my arm while trembling slightly and said, "How do you not see that? It's right there." She was apparently seeing a shadow figure, clear as day, looking right at us. Now, I may not have seen anything or felt anything, but just the fact that she was just standing behind me, gripping my arm harder and harder, and now had tears in her eyes. This woman is no actor. She was genuinely terrified. So now I was a little bit spooked myself. We got into the car and we left, and she said that the thing followed us with its face. I don't think that she could see discernible eyes, though, as we drove past it. We said some prayers to St. Michael and others, and really, that was about it. Now, could it have just been the mold problem? Maybe, but as far as I know, the mold in there, it really shouldn't have caused anything like that. Could she have just been seeing things? Possibly, but why the reaction like that? To this day, I'm really not sure what happened, but all I know is that it was a bit of a scary experience, and to be honest, I was glad that I was leaving. For a little bit of context, this happened last year around February. I am 17 and I'm a female. So, it was a random day. I had just finished school and I was home. I've always been very scared when I'm home alone, but it's not like all the time, but sometimes it just gets to me and I feel very bad and a bit paranoid, really. I'm just going to describe to you as well how my hallway is made so that you can understand the context to this story. So at the beginning of the hallway, there's my bedroom on the left, and after that, there's my parents' bedroom, still on the left, and at the end there's the bathroom that is the toilet too. The door to the bathroom is weird though because there's sort of a curved window in it, so if I'm inside the bathroom I can see movements and vice versa. If I'm outside, I can also see movements from inside the bathroom, but it's not very clear. Anyway, so I was in my room and I decided to go to the toilet that was in the bathroom, and when I was in it, I didn't close the door or anything because, like I said, I was home alone. And then I heard a sound coming from my parents' room, like the floor was creaking and somebody was walking towards me. Of course, I locked the door right away, and so, I had 10% on my phone and all that in all the horror movies. But honestly, I have zero survival skills, and I didn't think that it was that serious, so I called a friend on FaceTime and told her everything, but really I was scared, but sort of still laughing. It's what I do when I get terrified. So I decided to approach the said curved window that I mentioned earlier, and that was when I saw a man. I started to scream like I'm calling the police and leave and stuff like this. I didn't have a lot of battery on my phone, but I decided at this point to call my dad, who quickly rushed home. But still, at this point, I had no battery and I just had to pray for my dad to get home quickly. I was scared, and I imagined that when my dad was going to open the front door that the man was going to jump on him or something like that. After about 45 minutes, where I was just sitting in the bathroom on the toilet, but holding the door in case the man tried to push it open, my dad finally arrived. And trust me, I heard the floor creak again. And then my dad told me that I could come out and that there was really nothing there. In fact, there were no windows open or anything. I was really confused by that, and I think about this whole thing often. Like, did I imagine everything, or did something really happen? Just so you know as well, I'm really not into the supernatural stuff or explanations, so my theory is that somebody actually broke into the house at some point. I happened to come home at around that moment. They hid, they were somewhere around the house, and they got out before my dad got home. Really, that's the only logical explanation for it. Still though, whether paranormal or not, that is a terrifying thought. About 6 or 7 years ago, a friend and I were on our way to visit another friend of ours who had moved to a small town for a teaching job in a state high school. All of us grew up in the same seaside state capital, and the small town in question is about 120 kilometers of bad road, curvy and slippery, but through it is a very scenic route as it goes through hills and also a natural reserve. Now, I cannot remember much of the tree prep per se, but really it doesn't matter too much. I was driving and we hopped onto the highway that goes inland. Rain was pouring down and we were listening to Black Flag whilst talking about music when I stopped at a gas station because the gas was getting low, and this friend and I, well, we're kind of charmers, so we start some small talk with the cashier and I mention that we're going somewhere. The cashier then mentions a shortcut through a dirt road instead of the usual highway, citing that it would cut 30 minutes short off the trip, but that it wasn't really that safe given the weather conditions. I emphasized that it was raining hard, but we were both idiots and, at the time, drunk idiots as well, so we kept an eye on the entrance and took the shortcut. It was a rocky road that cut through the Atlantic forest, probably illegal since it also cut through a national park. Due to the heavy rain, as you can imagine, it was especially rocky and muddy, so I had to keep a steady speed of about 5 to 10 kilometers per hour, in a Ford Ka 2015, mind you. There was not a single light in sight as well. Not a house, not a street light, only the car headlights showing nothing but water pouring down, and a disgustingly horrible road ahead. We were joking about how the rain stopped, and my friend said that he wanted to take that chance to take a bit of a leak, so I just stopped in the middle of the road and I told him to hurry up. He then covers his shoes with a pair of plastic bags from the beers that we bought and goes to the front of the car. I honk a few times just for the heck of it, to take a few laughs of the situation, and he moves a little bit forward where the headlight sort of doesn't hit him anymore. And it took the time to light a cigarette to hear him kind of exclaim, sort of yell in fright, I guess, like when you're taken by surprise by something. And the guy ran back to the car, slipping and falling on the ground and messing up all of my passenger seat with his muddy pants and slamming the door. He then looks at me and says that he saw what he believed was a mountain lion or something like that, and that I should slam the gas and get the heck out of here. Obviously, I couldn't do that because of the conditions. Also, it would mess up my car's suspension. Instead, I turn off the music, we wait a little bit, and nothing happens. But after about 20 seconds, we both see a huge, and I mean absolutely massive figure move between the trees. It was at least 2 meters tall or so, and we couldn't really see much of it, only black fur and the eyes that reflected the car's headlights. But as fast as we saw it, the thing went left and back into the woods. I think that I speak for both of us when I say that we were absolutely frozen and ecstatic all at the same time. To this day, I still don't know how I could remain calm enough to start the car and slowly drive away to our friend's place. We told him about it, and he said that it was probably a mountain lion still, but I don't know. Mountain lions aren't typically 2 meters tall. They may be horizontally that long, but not tall. And I swear that I could hear its footsteps as it ran away as well, despite the windows being closed, so whatever it was also extremely heavy. Anyway, I just wanted to share this in case anybody out there might know what the heck we saw that night. I was born and raised in Denmark, but I originate from Macedonia, and my whole childhood we mostly visited Macedonia by car, rarely by plane, which is a 2-day trip. We always either ended up sleeping in Hungary or Serbia as well. My parents always preferred to spend the night in Subotica, Serbia, the first city after the Hungarian-Serbian border, because many travelers had had bad experiences, including my grandparents, with robbery in that region of Hungary. Now, I was about 8 or 9 when this happened. We got a motel in Subotica, don't know which one, but we got 2 rooms. My brother shared the room with my father, and I shared it with my mother. The motel room was pretty standard. Right to the entrance was the bathroom, and the entire wall on the left of the entrance were wardrobes, drawers, and in between those, there was a table with a mirror above it. There were 2 twin beds, which I didn't like because when I was a kid I couldn't sleep without feeling that there was a person behind my back as I sleep on my side. I used to sleep in my brother's room even though I had my own room, but my mum slept on the bed closest to the entrance and I slept closest to the windows. As I said, I couldn't fall asleep because I was scared to turn my back to the open, so I was just sort of laying there on my back listening to my mum snoring. I was awake for a long time, trying desperately to fall asleep on my back, and at one point I heard a crack near the entrance. I calmed myself down because, it's old furniture and it cracks, right? Plus, that often happens at home anyway too, but then the drawer closer to the beds, on the left of the mirror, cracked even louder than the one at the entrance. At this point, I was really scared. I probably stopped breathing to hear if anything else was going to happen. I always hold my breath when I'm scared and focusing at the same time. But it was quiet. And instead, I see a silhouette in the mirror. Not on our side, but inside the mirror, pass slowly. It was like grey smoke almost. It went from left to right, and when it went out of the frame, it was very quiet for a couple of seconds. And then the wardrobe on the right side of the mirror, it made a huge bang, as if somebody had punched it with all their force. I was obviously scared, and I didn't move nor close my eyes. I just stared at the wall for hours before, eventually, I must have fallen asleep. Now, you might wonder why I didn't wake my mum or start screaming, and to tell you the truth, I really don't know why either. My parents always told me ghosts aren't real, so I'm guessing that was probably the reason. Because I am mostly scared of not being believed, which is also the reason that I haven't spoken about this to many people. Another reason was that I am a boy, and when I was little I had been told to man up a lot, so I didn't want to show any signs of weakness, I guess, and another reason too was probably also the fact that I was too scared to move or do anything. I was completely frozen. Today I wish that I had said something to my mum though. As a kid, I thought that both my parents didn't believe in the paranormal, but now I know that my mum does. My dad doesn't, though. So in recent years, I told her, and she said that I should have woken her up, but she also said that I was a kid, implying that I don't remember the situation all that well. I've also told my brother about this, and he believes what I saw, but he thinks that it was some kind of my mind playing tricks on me thing because I was scared. Which I'll admit is a possibility, but really I don't think so. Another possibility I thought of, though, was that I had a sleep paralysis episode. But that was an ongoing theory of mine up until the point that I actually experienced sleep paralysis once, and it wasn't the same as that time in Serbia. In Serbia, I was wide awake the entire time. I never really fell asleep prior to the event with the said silhouette. I have had other creepy encounters, but for all of them I always thought of a rational explanation. This one though, this is the one that bugs me, because genuinely I just really don't know what to make of it. After my experience with sleep paralysis, I've started to believe a bit more in this stuff. Not because of the sleep paralysis itself, but because I know now that the encounter in Serbia really wasn't sleep paralysis. And I'm sharing this because, well, I want more people to see it or hear it and tell me if they know anything about this. I would be happy to take any answers, questions, or information that you guys might be able to provide. I work at a big retail store as a self-checkout host. But most of my days are spent walking laps and listening to customers saying things like, "I don't work here," or "Why aren't you on the register?" I understood their frustrations. Usually, there would be 2 or 3 of us at the self-checkout, and maybe 2 manned registers open. We got a new guy in. His name was Terry. Terry always wore a mask as it was 2021 and COVID was still COVIDing. I was training him, telling him to stock candy in bags and all that. He would ask questions anyone would ask, if I'm in school, if I have a girlfriend. I lived in a small city or big town that had a good college. Students from all over the country would come and usually wound up with prisons or retail. I usually asked the same questions too. I told him no on both accounts, and he then asked if I ever went hunting. We had a lot of woods and a big forest around town. No, I don't really like guns. He said that he'd have to take me one day though. A few days go by and he's over on my side again. He asks if I have any family in town, and if I did, do they live close? I live 3 doors down from my mum. He starts talking about hunting again, how he was out with his buddies and started using pack tactics, where they would box in the prey and finish off. Weird for deer, seeing as they flee at the first sound of any noise. He's off for a few days though, because new hires have problems getting hours for the first 3 weeks. I talked to one of my co-workers and they tell me that he asks a lot about me. The next time I see him, his questions are very telling. How tall would you say you are? How much do you weigh? How well do you know the woods past so-and-so street? I'm a pretty big guy at 6 feet and 300